Well, welcome to a new series of the Daily Combat Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Stockbridge, and joining me is my co-host, Matthew Hollywood Connelly.
That's right. The bicep has gone up.
The bicep is up, just the one today.
I did. I've got a microphone in the way of the other one. I carefully did consider that, but I thought that 5 seconds into the new episode, he didn't want a microphone.
It could have been too much. It could have been too much for the audience. They've been waiting for weeks, and to only get the one by might have been disappointing for some. So we do apologise straight from the outset. It's not good to start a new series with an apology, but nonetheless, we know what the double buy expectations are of our demographic.
200% more bicep next week.
So it's been a big last month or so in the world of combat sports. Jake Paul's still around.
He is indeed.
And Dana White's talking about him a lot.
He is. Yeah. Wow. Jeez. I bet Dana's sort of eating his words at the moment because he was expecting Ben Askren to take him out, and of course Ben Askren came in with the dad bod that didn't do any training, had a broken hip. Got knocked out in about
3 seconds.
Yeah, it was like first minute or something.
Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing.
I think I literally could have done better.
That's good. All he had to do was move, really.
He didn't move. He was a heavy bag with eyeballs.
So Ben Askren's come and gone, and we've and in his midst, there is now talk of Anderson Silva, Jake Paul.
Yeah, that's right. So it was Tyron Woodley had a match as well.
Yeah.
And although I've looked everywhere for it, I don't know what Trilla's media play is, but unless you actually bought the pay-per-view, it's freaking hard to find any sort of replays. I was looked for maybe 2 or 3 days of following the event.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. I want to see the highlights. I want to see you can't see it from this part of the world. You can't see this. And I'm like, I just want to see the thing. This is the problem, Dave. Stockbridge. We're talking about distribution and getting your event in front of as many people as you want. And unless you're actually sitting there willing to pay $50 to see the actual fight, it's like, well, I want to know what happened. It's finished.
It's a really intriguing thing, and I think that when it comes to televised combat sports, full stop, we're really in this middle space at the moment where there are going to be those that hook themselves straight up to this pay-per-view model, and that's definitely the direction that Trilla's gone. And then you've got UFC that have got a very fine balancing act between providing loads of really good quality free content and a lot of hype videos and a lot of build-up, and then just constricting the main events essentially. Right. So, which seems to work really well for the growth of the sport. I don't know if Trilla's really interested in the growth of the sport, though. It doesn't really appear to be. Yeah. As a matter of fact, they're seemingly interested in people in the last 5 minutes of their career for the most part. Although I will say, Anderson Silva looked fantastic in the ring, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, Tito Ortiz is my favourite fighter, so it didn't look too fantastic for me. It looked fantastic till the point where Tito got hit with that left arm, and then I went click and turned it off.
He was looking busy. He was there. He was getting in there. He got some accommodations. Nothing really seemed to land, but Anderson Silva moved really well, and he just bobbled his head around, and it was a quick right, and it was all over.
Yes, horrible
to watch.
Oh man, it is.
How many more times is Tito Ortiz going to find himself in a ring or an octagon or a bare knuckle? Where to next for Tito Ortiz? Well, if you were in his corner right now, what would you be suggesting?
Yeah, I think he's retired about 7 times.
Yep.
He had his whole career was through the UFC, so he started UFC and finished his career there. Well, finished. His first finish. His first retirement was from the UFC.
The first of the 8th retirement.
That's right.
Retirements, yeah.
He went to Bellator. He fought Chael Sonnen. He had some fights there as well. And a couple of small organisations he sort of bounced around a little bit. Obviously, he's a big name. He's always going to have that attraction, the fan base that, at any point in time, he says, hey, I'm fighting. There will be people that are paying to see him, sort of like Bob Sapp.
That's right. Everybody wants to see the train wreck. They want to see what happens.
That's right. And although in the last probably 5 fights he has looked quite good. He still looked competitive. I mean, the people that he went
he's in great shape.
Yeah, he's still training hard, still looking good. I think he's late 40s now. But yeah, still owns a gym and trains all the time. But first time he's actually been knocked out was this Anderson Silva fight, like knocked out cold, and he was face down. And unfortunately, people keep sending me
There's
that.
a lot of memes.
Oh man, my inbox is filled because everyone knows, but that's my favorite guy. And there's a photo of him.
All the people, Tito's your guy as well.
Yeah,
I mean.
of course. Oh man, and the photo was him like face down with a smile. And it's obviously he's not smiling, but he's unconscious. But his face it just twitched like that for
Just
half
enough.
a millisecond,
Enough.
and that's the one they're like, yes. Grab that screen grab. He's
Involuntary
smiling while he's
twitch.
asleep. And then, of course, he took a dive, and there he is smiling about his payday. It's like, no, he's not. And thank you for sending me that.
What a tragedy, though, that somebody who's had an illustrious career such as Tito's and has really done a lot for the growth of combat sports as well, hanging on to his career perhaps a few years too long, finds himself now, a meme essentially. And how do you come back from that? Like, honestly, like what sponsors are interested? Who's going to watch next time? What does come next for a fighter in that position now?
It's difficult.
And then it answers the question as well: what would happen if Mike Tyson jumps in the ring and something similar happens?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Evander Holyfield will ever go again, and he probably shouldn't have.
He looked great, though.
He did look good.
Physically, he looked great.
Physically good.
Yeah.
Very slow and lumbery.
Yeah.
But, you think who's holding the commission accountable for allowing these fighters to come back and get into a main event against somebody that, I guess you could argue the point with Tito and Anderson Silva, similar ages, both had illustrious careers in the same sport. And it's like, okay, you're taking away the other elements of wrestling and Muay Thai and kickboxing, and they're just doing the boxing part of it. But, when you've got Evander how old is Evander? 60?
58, I think.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, who's he fighting? And it's sort of, you go, man, he hasn't fought for so long. And it's like, yeah, you're physically in good condition, but when he gets knocked out in that way and that quickly, it's like, who let this happen,
Yeah. Who's providing the advice? Who's in the corner? And is it because there is just so much money thrown that they just figure, my legacy or pot full of gold?
That's right.
We could do with the new swimming pool, and so it is hard because you're also talking. These are prize fights now. This isn't. No one's fighting for status or a championship belt or an opportunity or to be the number one contender now. It's just like, hey, this might be the last chance I've got to cash in on whatever it is that my brand's got. But is it? Is it a little bit narrow to be thinking of combat sports athletes as simply those people in the ring, or can people do things outside of the ring? Can they take their brand out of the ring, out of the cage, and be commercially viable and culturally relevant in the way that maybe Mike Tyson is being right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's almost strange that he did get back in the ring, because I guess he probably had that pressure. Everyone always asking him, so will you ever get back in? And, I think for the last 20 or maybe even 30 years, he's been like, no, I'm not interested in doing it at all. And then all of a sudden, I guess something clicked, or an opportunity presented itself where it was like, this is a payday, or this is a big enough event, or something that was inspiring enough for him to say, actually, I want to get back into it. Or maybe just step back into the gym and just found the excitement or joy of boxing again and getting in shape. And then it was like, hey, you're back in training, you're enjoying it. Do you want to have a fight? Let's work you towards something, as opposed to, I don't know how he is with his money. I think he's always had ups and downs with it. But, to say, let's go and find as many retired fighters as we can that have a name and just offer some money and see if they'll get in the ring. Yeah.
Do you think in some part it was because the card got switched up right at the end? Or maybe he was preparing for an Oscar De La Hoya type opponent? Because Vitor Belfort, he's a dangerous man.
He's still young as well. I mean, he's
46, I think.
Well, I mean, compared to
58,
yes, exactly.
12 years is a long time at the tail end. There's no doubt. But I mean, he looked like he was, physically very, very capable.
There might be a reason for that, but I don't know if you remember TRT Vitor from the UFC days.
Yeah, optimal like Uberim. But
Yes. Uberim. Yeah, wow, that was a big change.
Well, and what a change for him as well. Like he went from being undefeatable, almost like
Demolition
insurmountable, to a different beast.
That's right. It's strange. I mean, that heavyweight division, with the ability to get knocked out in one punch, it's by anybody in that. With so much power.
Yeah.
And you're seeing, as I've said a couple of times, I think if it doesn't end in the first round, it's going to a decision. Because it is like, that is the moment where both of the heavyweights have that level of knockout power, but it dissipates really quickly. Especially if it's a grappling heavy match and it's sort of, they're both leaning on each other or using that energy to defend with wrestling as opposed to throwing punches. But it is interesting seeing Alistair Overeem's style change from when he was in the Pride and doing Muay Thai kickboxing, very aggressive, very shelled, which might have more to do with the size of the gloves that he was wearing, but a lot more aggressive, a lot more chasing, cornering opponents and using his power to knock them out. Big knees, the uber knee, the Overeem sort of thing, the big kabush, as Michael Chavello likes to call it, the goodnight Irene move. But when he went into the UFC, obviously came in as Demolition Man, obviously on some special vitamins, vitamin S, maybe. And then when they implemented the USADA drug testing protocols and they were really cracking down on it, and he did get busted for, I think it was elevated levels of testosterone. They didn't actually catch like a substance, but his levels, I think in men it's supposed to be like your range for test is like supposed to be from 1 to 6, and 6 is like extremely maximum, like
very, very manly.
Yeah, that's right. And most of the high level athletes are sitting around 4, and Overeem's was at 40.
Just amazing.
Yeah, it's so weird. I don't know. He blamed, I think, eating a steak that had.
What had the cow been eating?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
He found the only cow on the human growth hormone.
That's right. Riddled with testosterone, that cow was. Yeah. So he obviously got caught. Had
elevated
just a little bit. Oh, just a little bit. Yeah. But then he got suspended, and then obviously when he came back, it was such a physical
very
difference.
Depleted.
It was insane. It was like there's comparison photos, pre 40, and then whatever he managed to sneak around to get to when he came back, to avoid those levels, because he would have had to still been on something. I mean, even therapeutically, if you've gone that high, you're going if you're not artificially going on it. You're going to be way down, even at 1, maybe less than 1.
Yeah.
So maybe he's on TRT, I don't know. But when you look at those two comparison photos, and it's like Mr. Olympia on one side, and then half of that, and like a melted version, just everything smaller. But in terms of his fighting style,
like a birthday balloon that's just been out for like maybe like 8 or 9 days. It's just
I've just got an image of it was like a 40-degree day. This is completely unrelated, but it just popped into my head. It was like a 40-degree day. It was like 4 in the afternoon. It'd been 40 all day. It's really hot. I went to my car that had been sitting in the sun all day, and I opened the boot, and a fly like flew out, but it flew out like oh.
It wasn't like freedom. It was like oh,
been sitting in the sauna all day. I don't know. That just popped in my head.
That's post vitamin S. Uberim.
That was Uberim. After USADA.
Post USADA. It really, it's like two different athletes, isn't it?
Yes,
it's and when you is there room? Is there room? Because I think we've gone from like prize fighting, say pre-war prize fighting, to where most professional fighters would not have been MMA or martial arts based. It would have been boxing based. So a prize fight, you challenge whoever. It didn't really. So you had that as part of the fighting culture, no doubt. Post-war, you've got a lot more regulation. You've got all of the associations. You've got everybody's going. So the sport becomes somewhat legitimized, and now we're kind of going back where we're letting almost 60-year-old men fight against world-class athletes. We're letting YouTube stars with no prior history in the sport kind of come in at the top end of the sport, where the risks are at their greatest. Not necessarily competing against the best in the sport now, but competing against world-class athletes in their own right and in their own time. Is there an appetite for just juicing these guys up and Ubering, up against Brock Lesnar, juiced up to the gills, chuck them into a ring at 300 pounds and just see what happens? Yeah. Is that the future of prize fighting?
I don't think it'll be the future. I think that it'll
be a part of prize fighting.
I think it'll.
Is it part of the future?
It's in the future.
It's in the future.
It's definitely in the future. I think it's got to go hand in hand. I think you're gonna have to have your legitimate side of it.
Yeah.
Where you'll have your linear champions that are working towards the world championship belt, and then you're gonna have your, I guess, for lack of a better description, freak show fights outside of that. Yeah. And I love those things.
I do too. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It gets us talking. I mean, this is all we're talking about so far.
That's right. I'm not talking about the UFC fight from the weekend where number 6 in the world fought number 7. I don't even know who they are. So but when you've got a name, I'm always talking about this.
You are.
You got to have a
I've
story.
led you down the branding path, the narrative path.
So let's get you to this point, and away you go.
But it is true, isn't it?
Yeah.
People are buying into the story and into the name brands, and there's a curiosity around those name brands and a nostalgia attached to those people that people are vested in at some level. That's leading them to spend that $25 to get the pay-per-view.
Yeah. I mean, if it's their heroes or their idols or their favourite fighter from the last 10 or 15 years, and it's like, geez, I'd love to see him fight just one more time. And it's like, well, here's your opportunity. And it's like, maybe I shouldn't have watched it. But, I think for a fan to accept that they're not the world champion now. They're not the caliber of athlete that they were. Yeah. But they are still the same person going in there and competing. And as a fan, if you're able to accept that, they're not going to be as fast, they're not going to be as quick, they're not going to be as durable, but it is still that person going in, you're getting to see them compete again. I mean, Mike Tyson stepping in the ring, everyone wanted to see it. It's like, everyone knew he wasn't going to be the same Mike Tyson as when he was like 19, knocking everybody out in the world. But it was still fun. It was like, this is a fun thing. This is Mike Tyson. He's fighting again. Let's go. Let's watch it. So if you're able to build those events, and it's like, even if it's like they're not at the premiere of their athletic career, it is still a fun narrative and a character. And it's like, you get to see the legend, and even if when the actual fight happens, it's not as interesting or it's not as exciting as what it could have been. The whole build-up and the surrounding part of the event, the funfair, the fluff, I guess, that's where the excitement comes, and it's still a good experience.
So with talking about Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, like that was on the cards, and there was even some hype videos out there about it, and some cool kind of, or it even got somewhat commercialised with some cool ads that some people might have seen online. So that probably wouldn't happen now, I would anticipate. I don't know if that's a fight that people are keen to watch as much now after what we saw on the weekend as what they might have been 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So who's actually then next for Mike Tyson?
He said he wanted to fight again?
I think if the money was right, he'd be up for it.
Yeah. It's sort of like
if it was Evander Holyfield, I think he'd be up for it now. But, I think if it was Evander Holyfield, I think there would have been a match there.
It would have. I think people would still actually buy it and want to see it. I think that the difference is that the value of the event has diminished significantly after seeing what happened with Evander. Yeah. And it looks good physically, but not good in the actual sport of boxing in terms of the speed, I mean, he blocked those punches that knocked him out. So
Yeah.
You would have to question who's going to sanction this event. And it's like, well, did you not see what happened to him? Like, where is your job as a commissioner if you're going to put him in and the same thing happens or worse? It's like, why did you allow this to happen? It's your responsibility to protect these people from themselves. But I guess, if that did happen and the commission did block it, they would just find somewhere else to do it. I mean, where there's a will, there's a way. I just don't think that the demand is as high. It's sort of like one loss diminishes your stock so much. And if you lose badly, it's sort of like, well, how do you come back? You'd have to win a few fights to get, even at his level, it's sort of like, well, you got destroyed. And do you want to fight again against somebody else to try to build your name? You already had that legacy.
Yeah.
It's a hard fight to sell compared to what it would have been.
Yeah. Yeah, so now there doesn't seem to be an obvious Mike Tyson opponent on the horizon.
It is sort of like dusting off the catalogue and going, is anyone else? Who else? Rocky Balboa? Is he?
That's right.
Rocky 8.
We do love on the Daily Combat podcast, and that is a crossover athlete and an event. And also we love it when somebody just drops out last minute. So we, in the arm wrestling world, over our break, there was there was some interesting sequence of events that took place. So for those that haven't been following the arm wrestling world, for instance, you had the number one contender, you would say, in the Western world. That would have been Michael Todd coming up against Levin, who is a beast of a man, huge Russian guy. So and generally regarded as being number one in the world. Most people would
shaved a bear. He's actually that big.
And not a lot either. They just put on like a number 4.
He doesn't talk because it's only growls.
He is it 160, 180 kilos.
Yeah,
he's gigantic, and a ridiculous wrist, 10-inch hand.
It's a plank of wood with fingers.
With fingers attached. Now, most people, and I would say even today, most people would say he's the number one guy, but not really tested, and certainly not tested. And for those that aren't following it, you've essentially got 2 big leagues in the world. You've got the Russian-dominated league. You've got the American-dominated league. So you had the best of the Russians, who the Russians are saying is the number one guy, and the number one guy. So it was like the America's Cup of arm wrestling. We were going to find out finally who was the number one in the world, and then last minute, nope. They dropped out completely, and politics played a massive role in that. And from the Russian side of things, it appeared from the outside world in that they got a little bit gutless in the end, and didn't, just in case their big guy was going to lose. And so, who stepped in? And perhaps you want to take it from here.
Well, so Devon Larratt and Larry Wheels Promotions.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't following, Larry Wheels has got about 1 million subscribers on YouTube. One of the biggest influencers in the world, is now Dubai based, and off his own bat put together this event, which essentially settled who was number one in the Western world.
That's right. Yeah.
So the fight between number 1 and number 2 didn't happen. So we ended up with a fight between number 1 and number 2, maybe top 3 in the Western world, and the arm wrestling world was somewhat surprised by the result.
Yeah, absolutely. So Devon Larratt is former world champion. He had lost his sort of heavyweight title to Michael Todd, who was the other element in that Western side versus the Eastern League. So Levan, I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I can't. From the European League, so Saganchvili. I don't know. I can't say it.
That's a good attempt.
I'm just going to say Levan. And Michael Todd was the match to make. Absolutely, they needed to do that. That was their opportunity to combine the leagues or have a super match that everybody in the world that follows arm wrestling wanted to see that match.
Yep.
And the European president stopped it from happening.
Yep.
No, not going to happen. If you want your American champion to go against our champion, he has to qualify through the tournaments and through the leagues and do these things to be able to get the opportunity to go against our champion. And it's like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to miss the boat because people are ready to see that match right now.
Yeah.
And that is going to be the one that's going to promote the sport to the new level, is going to bring audience and eyeballs from all around the world that want to see this thing. And, people that are fans of arm wrestling are going to you got to get their mates. You got to see this thing on this guy, and this American versus the guy. It was the storyline that would have been, the blockbuster match.
Yeah.
They didn't go ahead with that, stupidly. And so Larry Wheels, who has been getting into arm wrestling,
he's turned into a big fan. Yeah,
he is an awesome guy. Obviously, one of the strongest guys who's ever lived, has set world records in all sorts of things. Seems to be nothing that he can't be awesome at. Got into arm wrestling, which is fantastic, and has been really training hard. And he put together a pay-per-view for arm wrestling, which is
incredible,
not even heard of. I think they've only done that maybe once before. Pay-per-view card streamed online, easy to access. Everyone could find I think it was $5, which is justifiable.
Yep.
And put together the event. He was on the card as well. He went against Schoolboy, or he probably shouldn't have, because Schoolboy destroyed him.
Yeah.
But
it was a good matchup, and again, got people talking about that matchup for weeks in the lead up to it.
Exactly, and aesthetically, you've got Larry Wheels, who is enormous, massive
huge
arm,
human being,
massive bodybuilder physique, and then he was going against Schoolboy, who looks like a schoolboy.
Yeah,
I mean
as much as a 6'4", 260-pound schoolboy can look, but he does. He looks like a baby, doesn't he?
Exactly. Yeah. He obviously trains really hard, but he's not somebody that you would just look at and instantly go, oh, that guy's
he's a powerhouse.
Yeah, and so from the aesthetic point, it's like, oh, the bodybuilder guy looks way stronger than that.
He's like
guy.
the Hoist Gracie, essentially,
exactly.
of arm wrestling. Yeah.
That's right. So they had their match, and Schoolboy dominated completely.
Which was like a win for arm wrestling, really.
Yeah,
wasn't
for sure.
It?
Yeah, that's right. It sort of shows that the technique will go against the strength. So you can be a lot stronger than your opponent, but if you can't access that strength, then you'll get dominated.
Yep, as I found out every Sunday.
Pretty much. That's it. But you're getting there. You're doing good.
Getting there. Yeah. Sounds so patronising. Continue.
But on that card, the main event was Devon Larratt, former champion who had lost to Michael Todd, the American champion, current heavyweight champion. And so because they couldn't match up the European Levan with Michael Todd, Larry Wheels put his card together and put Devon Larratt and Michael Todd together. Probably the second biggest match that could have happened.
Yeah.
And so Devon...
and for Devon, it was relatively last minute. Yeah. So there wasn't a huge preparation. Yeah. But he went through quite the physical transformation in the lead up to it.
That's right. Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, he documented it on YouTube, just every day, putting up videos of what he was doing, and it was mainly eating.
So for those that aren't familiar, Devon Larratt's a big guy. Like, he's tall, he's 6'5", thereabouts. So he's got a pretty reasonable frame, but he's not the most muscular guy in the world, is he? Like, he's got long limbs, and even though he's definitely a powerful looking guy, he's more athletic than what you'd say bulky. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But he came in bulked.
Oh, yeah.
He was huge.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much weight he actually put on, but it was significant.
It was 295, I believe, on the table that night. And Michael Todd, who would traditionally be a lot heavier than Devon, I think was 270 or 270, early 270s on the table that night. So there was a bit of a reversal there in weight. And and what happened, I guess nobody really expected.
No, that's right. Well, the last matchup they'd had, where Michael Todd ended up with the victory, it was very close, but I think it was spread over first to 3, and I think that Michael won. This is off the top of my head. I think it was 3-2 or 3-1. It was, and the matches were really long. Like, they were
wars.
Big wars. With Michael Todd's style, he uses what we call a king's move, where his arm he's leaning,
which
back.
Some people, outsiders, might say is cheating.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. It's one of the controversial moves in arm wrestling, and a lot of people despise it completely because
you're kind of hanging off the table.
Yeah,
like this,
that's
with
right.
Your arm almost straight.
That's right.
Hard to pin.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah. So his arm has been broken twice previously, and it's sort of where the bone has healed up. his arm almost won't straighten.
Yeah.
And so he uses that to his advantage in the positioning that he gets into, where he can lean with his body, with his arm almost fully extended, but still above the pin pad.
Yeah.
And the other person is doing everything and anything to pin them, and they just can't get that last inch, and they end up exhausting themselves. And then he can keep working against them until they get tired and getting through and winning. So that's what happened in that last time that they met up.
Is it fair to say that a lot of people thought that maybe Devon's days at the top were over? Like he seemed to, even in his social media, and he seemed to be kind of sitting back a little bit, commenting a lot on what's going on in the world, giving plenty of advice, but not seemingly being ready to kind of head back to the top end. It seemed like maybe his days were over at the top, and then this happened.
Yeah. Well, he said that himself. He said that. He was, I don't know if he said depressed, but he definitely had a lack of motivation. And I think losing to Michael Todd, and then with that Kings move, I mean, you have to come up with a strategy to overcome it. And it's sort of like, he had with Devon, he had reached the pinnacle of his career in terms of he'd done everything. He'd been world champion. He'd been around the world and has a living as an arm wrestler. Has a YouTube channel with a big following.
Yeah.
And then to be beaten with the Kings move, and then it's like, well, to overcome that Kings move, I'm going to have to spend months to try to figure out how to do it. Do I want to invest that time to beat one guy to become the world champion again? But when the match fell apart between Michael Todd and Levan, and Larry Wheels stepped up and said to Devon, hey, let's put you and Michael Todd together and put it in Dubai, and we'll stream it and it'll be a big event. He refound that motivation, and so started eating, I think, 50 pancakes a day.
Enormous amounts of food.
Yeah, but the interesting thing was, so when the match actually took place, so it was Devon destroyed Michael Todd, 6-0.
It was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was almost like Michael was trying to arm wrestle his dad or something.
Yeah.
It was like...
He couldn't do anything. He couldn't get to his Kings move. He couldn't move any which way, and Devon completely dominated.
And from an outsider's perspective, it almost looked like he was injured or like wasn't able to access his strength, or maybe had some nerve issues. But afterwards, he claimed that he was the strongest he's ever been going into that, and felt like he was as prepared as he could ever have been.
That's right, and what a compliment for Devon. And the interesting thing, and this is what I love about the sport of arm wrestling, is that there's video of them after the match. They're both sitting in a couple of chairs just chatting. And I'm not sure who was filming it, but Devon was telling Michael exactly how he'd beat him, what technique he'd used, how he did it, what he trained. He said, I beat you on riser, which is where your wrist is not, your wrist is pointed more towards your face, which is what we call the rising muscle. Roman has an incredible riser.
Roman. Yes.
Roman's the producer. Also an arm wrestler, but has a concreting manual labour background. And you find a lot of guys that have that repetitive work or labourer sort of jobs have that really strong wrist in that rising position. And so Devon had worked in that position significantly for this matchup, because he figured out that if Michael wasn't able to get that rising spot off of the start, he wouldn't been able to get into his King's move. And so that is what he used, and that's what won him the match completely 6-0. So it is interesting with the sport of arm wrestling, where it's such a camaraderie that you can quite literally go to your opponent after you've won and but this is what I did to win. This is what you need to work on to stop me from beating you in the future. You never have that in any of the sport.
No, it doesn't really happen. You can't imagine Vitor Belford having a bit of a chat with Evander Holyfield, giving him some tips on how to beat him next time, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's like, so what I did was I punched you in the face.
Yeah.
Don't get punched in the face.
That's the way. You just got to avoid it. Yeah, don't be 58 and box. There's a hint for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a destruction. Devon won the match 6-0. It was the event overall, production-wise, it was at a standard that could have been better, but it worked, and it went well enough that they're going to do another one. I'm not sure how much money he would have made. It would have been a significant portion, because I think it was one of the most watched arm wrestling events that's ever happened
of all time.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I mean, do the same thing again. Just
Great for the sport.
Yeah, grab the same guys. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like, people will watch the big names.
Yeah.
Keep throwing the big names together, and then add in. This is the way forward.
Yeah.
Put your name people on the cards, main events. Have Devon go against Schoolboy. Have Michael Todd against Larry. Have just mix them back up again, and then get some more known names in there.
Yeah.
But by doing that and having the audience wanting to see those matches, that's where you can add in the other people and build your stars in the undercard. And it's like, well, this is the match you want to see as the headlining card, but we had this amazing undercard match we're also going to show you, and so people get to know those fighters, and then those fighters are going to be the main event next time, and then you've got a highlight reel that you can put together for advertise your next fights. So it's building that off of the event that people want to see, and that's what they missed out on with that potential with the Michael Todd and Levan match. It was like you had the opportunity there to put a fight together or an arm wrestling match together that everybody wanted to see. So everyone was going to watch that card. So you had the opportunity to put all your other Russian fighters or arm wrestlers on that card, and all your you could have had a Russia versus USA card. Would have been
you
phenomenal.
would have had the attention of the arm wrestling world.
Absolutely. And then because of I can see the reasoning behind, I mean, obviously with the European League, it's like, this is our champion, this is our league, you want to come in and be part of it, then you need to work your way to the top. And that's the only way forwards for us. I think that is archaic kind of thinking. And
well, it's a little bit like making, a heavyweight fighter who's already got 4 belts come over and start from the beginning again in a different federation, just because that's that federation's rules. Essentially, it's exactly what it is.
That's exactly
Rather
right.
than saying, oh, well, I'm the heavyweight champion here, you're the heavyweight champion there, let's go.
Yeah.
Which is it's a little bit sad. But Devon seems to be making a habit out of just jumping in at the last minute. So I think when we were last recording, we were talking about Eddie and Thor coming together in the ring and what that might look like. Well, it's not happening now, but Devon Larratt has jumped into the breach. And so he went through quite the transformation to get into shape to take on Michael Todd, where he looked like he put on maybe 30 kilos in a very, very short period of time. And now all of that weight's coming off as he prepares and builds up his cardio in preparation for Thor in the ring at the end of this month.
I think it's this Saturday night.
Is it this Saturday already?
Yeah.
Wow.
I said
so. It was a
Saturday night. Let's get a viewing party.
Oh, that's right. It was exactly right.
That's this Saturday.
This Saturday at 11 p.m. local time. Is that right? Yeah.
11:30.
Yeah. So Devon Larratt once again just last minute jumps in. Again, Thor looks amazing. He looks in fantastic shape. He almost it doesn't look like he'd be an open competitive bodybuilder these days. He looks like he might be in the menswear section. So he looks in incredible shape and looks like a fighter. And Devon Larratt's coming to it with a military background. It seems he's not had any competitive bouts previously. So this is once again one of those crossover events that seems increasingly popular in the world of combat sports, which seems strange because combat sports is the most dangerous, the highest risk, greater chance of being injured permanently than in any. And yet there's Devon Larratt thinking, I'll jump in the ring with the strongest man in the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
Incredible.
Sure. No,
it says a lot about Devon Larratt, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. What an awesome guy. And if you ever watch
and he's 46 or 47 years old?
Yeah, I think so.
So, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, he's got the Special Forces background, having been in the Canadian military. And, I'm not sure how much physical, obviously crazy physical training, but in terms of combat, like boxing, I'm not sure how much of that hand-to-hand stuff that they would have specifically.
It would have been a long time ago, one would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. But, when Eddie Hall got injured and stepped out of the card, you've got Devon that's jumped up, and I would say that one of the main reasons for that is there is a viral video of Thor and Devon arm wrestling at an event.
Yes.
A few years ago with Devon, just pinning Thor easily.
Yes.
Even though strongest man in the world and humongous
At the
that
time.
Yeah, and Devon easily winning. And again, that just shows that the techniques of arm wrestling, preventing somebody that's stronger being able to access their strength. Because obviously Thor, he's probably 10 times stronger than Devon is.
And it was a different Thor then too.
Yeah.
I mean, Thor it wasn't long after he'd done 500 kilo bench press. Bench press,
That'd be
that'd be
with one
interesting.
hand.
Just a warm up,
Right.
but deadlift, and it wasn't long thereafter. So that was still Uber Thor, and then and I would say Devon was just skinny old Devon at that point. He didn't seem to be. He'd look like a normal guy if you bumped into a street. If normal people were normally 6'5", of course.
That's right. But going into this fight, so Eddie Hall injured last minute. Devon Larratt, okay, I'll jump in, and everyone's like, okay, well. Do you know how to box? But again, you got two names and an interest, and they've built a storyline, and doesn't really matter. Throw them in. Let's see it. I'll watch it. Yeah, and I'm going to.
Isn't it interesting? Like it's just a matter of profile. There was recently a movie that was cast, and a lot of the casting decisions were made on the followings of those respective people that were going for those roles. And there's no doubt that if you got 3 million people that follow you on Instagram, that there's some degree of bankability there. So if you're going to be an investor or you're a producer of a movie, well, you want some kind of a surety that I'm not going to put up 5 no-name people if it's not going to cost me any more to attract some people that have already got an audience of people that love them. And I guess that's where Devon Larratt's work over the last few years in developing that audience, that he's developed his storyline. There's a amongst his community and has some really devout and passionate fans that just want to see him do anything. It doesn't have to be arm wrestling, and to see him kind of stray into these areas is something that his fan base is super excited about. And I think Thor's fan base would just wanted to see a fight, and they don't even know who Devon Larratt is. They're just happy that there's going to be somebody else in there because they're just interested in seeing how Thor goes in the ring.
Exactly.
So I see there's for this style of event is really fun. But isn't it interesting to contrast that with what we saw with Evander Holyfield and Vitor Belfort? Not so fun.
No, that's right. Well, we'll see how fun it is after the event, whether or not Devon walks straight into one of those punches and gets knocked out, which I think is what's going to happen.
Do you think, so this is your bold prediction?
Is my prediction. First round, 40 seconds in, knockout.
40 seconds in.
From looking at the sparring footage of Devon, he has this habit. I don't know why anyone hasn't corrected this, but he's holding his hands up and walking into punches, and it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? I mean, sure, if you're trying to crowd somebody, but he's not throwing anything back. And I don't know, maybe in that 3 minutes that I've seen of his training, he would have been knocked out like 6 times, I think, against anybody that was actually trying to punch him.
And there's not a lot of snap that can happen when your arm doesn't straighten either.
That's right.
So Devon is unfortunately somewhat handicapped by his ability to not being able to straighten his arms due to arm wrestling for all those years. His arms are like this.
Yeah, he walks
like a T-Rex.
It does. He looks sort of like like a gorilla going along the street. If you had a silhouette and you just saw a shadow go past, you'd be like, "Is that a gorilla?
Is that a gorilla?"
His wrists are in.
No, it's Levin.
It's Levin, yeah. That's right. Yeah, well, that was the next arm wrestling match that should have happened was Levin and Devon. Levin and Devon. And that didn't happen. The Europeans have their own thing happening, the top 8 thing, and one of the Americans, Dave Chafee, they ended up having a match together, and Levin obviously won that 6-0 domination. And, for the Europeans, it was like, aha, we told you our guy was the best, but it was Dave Chafee wasn't at the highest level in the American League. He's definitely one of the best, but he is not the current champion. He is not at the absolute pinnacle, which is what Levin is. And so he was sort of expected to lose, but, everyone was sort of, I think if anyone wasn't a fan of the European League, they were going, please, Dave, just win, But domination, I mean, Levin is obviously fantastic. And it would still be an interesting match to see him versus Devon versus Michael Todd, to see if Michael could get his King's Move style working.
Yeah.
But in terms of the boxing match, so you've got Thor and Devon. My prediction is Thor by a landslide. I think I'm going to put some big money on Thor.
Wow.
And I think that next week when we do our episode, I'll either be eating my shirt or I'll be sitting back with a sparkly gold necklace and
Junior windfall.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
If you walk in here bawling, we know what happened.
Yeah, you'll see me with a hat right down. but yes, watching that footage and seeing. Oh God, I don't know. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
The fanfare will be fun.
Yeah, the spectacle.
I don't know how much fun it will be if he gets obliterated.
Yeah.
And they'll go, why did you let him get in there?
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to see the extent that Thor. This is pure entertainment, essentially. I mean, there's no reputation on the line. No one's got a legacy to worry about. Neither men have fought in the ring with any type of vigor previously. So it's all just. It seems like a fun time.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if Thor will feel that he is in a good place and just plays it out for entertainment, perhaps. Goes a little bit light on Devon.
I don't think he will.
You don't think he will? You think he'd take the chance to get a good win under the lights? And
I think Thor's that kind of guy where he's like, any challenge he wants to dominate it. He wants to destroy it and he wants to win.
Yeah. Well, I mean, its previous bouts were largely unimpressive. So I guess he's got a point to prove there, and especially because Eddie looked really good on the bags. He's strong. He's got a lot of snap there, and he's strong and he moves well, and he's definitely got a fighter's background. It'd be interesting to see whether this is a stepping stone for Thor or whether this is the last time you ever see him in the ring.
If he loses, that'll be it. I mean, he can't make the Eddie Hall match up after.
No.
So Eddie's probably sitting there going, please, Thor, win.
Yeah.
Even though he probably doesn't like
It's a big
like
payday on
much.
the end for both of those guys, isn't
right.
it? That's a huge one.
It would destroy the match. If Devon comes in and wins, it's like, okay, Eddie, I guess you're going against Devon now.
Yeah, and then it's Devon and Levan in the ring.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how we sort that one out.
Sorry, Devon, you're now a boxer.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the greatest arm wrestler of all time, before we get off of arm wrestling, just jump back on the tables. Not a lot of training, apparently. Just very minimal preparation, and found himself on the tables with Chance Shaw, who's a great young up-and-coming super heavyweight. In America, he's ranked in the top 10, and a very impressive young man, and got taught a lesson.
Yeah, that's
by
right.
a 60-year-old man.
That's right.
The greatest of all time.
Exactly, yeah.
There's not too many combat sports where the greatest of all time can come back at 60, as we learned with Vander Holyfield, and essentially be very authoritative on the table.
So yes, John Brzenk is who you're referencing.
What did I call him?
You didn't say his name at all.
Oh, did I not? You
were talking about this mystical figure, the greatest of all time.
The greatest of all time.
The perfect storm. The guy whose name I can't remember. He's got skin and wears clothes, breathes air.
He's been known. Yeah.
He's been known to do those things. Yeah, so coming back, John Brzenk, greatest arm wrestler of all time, although he hates to be called that. Because if anyone introduces him as that, and he walks out and loses. It's like, oh, you're the greatest, though. Well, maybe you need to change your name. Yeah. No, but yes, dominated for, I think, 25 years. He was unbeaten or something.
Yeah.
And had retired maybe the last 5 years and dabbled in a little bit, see some training footage, or somebody that had a bit of celebrity status might come and some arm wrestlers would do a little bit of training with him, or he'd be at an event or something like that. So sort of still in the realm, but recently was like, okay, I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to get back in. And he went and did a tournament, dominated the tournament, won first place easily, and then had a super match with, as you said, one of the up-and-comers, Chance Shaw, and dominated that match as well. So there are some interesting matches for John, and I don't see him going through at that same absolute highest level, and beating the current world champions and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like with the other events we were just talking about, there are a lot of fun matches to see and a lot of potentials where it's like you've got somebody who is a young up-and-comer. It's like, well, let's see how John goes against them. Or, here's another guy of that similar era that has a name that John could go against. And, people will watch John arm wrestle no matter who he is.
Exactly right.
He'd arm wrestle his nana, and I would watch it. So that ability to have that built-in audience and then put him on anywhere, and people will watch, has a lot of value to setting up an event.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think John Brzezinski would be the least commercial, greatest of all time athlete of all time. In that he's, a lot of people outside of sport have no idea who he is, but even within the sport, he's really low key. He doesn't have a YouTube channel, or he might have just started a YouTube channel just recently. He's not crying out for attention. He's not. He's just so under the radar. With the man with the greatest legacy, and with the most to probably share in the sport. So it's interesting to now see that maybe in a social media sense, the giant has been awoken, and we might see a lot more from John. But also, how good would that be for arm wrestling?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's a wonderful thing that more people see more of him.
That's right. Well, it's the same with Ryan Bowen, one of the biggest. One of the best arm wrestlers in the country. There he is. And he was on our podcast, episode
doesn't say
7, I think. 7. And he was talking about, because he does a podcast with John, and obviously John Brzezinski is everybody's hero in the arm wrestling world. And Ryan wants to give back. He recognises that John has been the absolute champion for so long, but because arm wrestling is still underground, the money side of it isn't there yet. I believe that in the next 5 to 10 years that it will starting to rise, and people are making full-time careers from it and potential big paydays and that sort of thing. But John missed out on that time, even though he was so dominant. So Ryan wanting to allow anything that he makes or does and supporting John to get him to that level where he can start.
Where he can earn a living out of the sport that he's given so much to.
That's right, exactly. And to benefit him in any way, which is awesome of Ryan and great for John as well, because the world loves him and wants to see him do well continually. And anybody who watches arm wrestling or has seen any sort of arm wrestling will discover John Brzezinski in there somewhere. And go, okay, well, this guy, and it leads you to John Brzezinski.
All roads lead to John Brzezinski. Yeah,
he beats everybody. So to see him be able to sort of not cash in, but to get a reward for that, even if it's now after the fact. It's like, hey, here's an opportunity. The sport has grown, but we still want you to be part of it, and we want you to benefit from that growth. And
locally in arm wrestling, before we get off topic, that man right there against Lachlan Adair, coming up to essentially determine who the number one is in Australia now. That's going to be a super interesting one. But also, I mean, these guys are best friends. I think Lachlan was recently best man at Ryan's wedding, or vice versa, or both. So these guys are best mates, but they're meeting across the table to determine who is going to be number one. And I feel for Lachlan. Lachlan flew all the way to Perth to take on the number one at the time, Milkman.
Ryan Scott.
Ryan Scott, and because of COVID, was put back on a plane, sent back home. And Ryan, who just happened to get there within the specific window, stepped in his place, took out the number one positioning in completely unprepared, but nonetheless in quite a dominating way. And then and people had just been watching Ryan and Lachlan on the practice table, seeing how much stronger Lachlan was at the time. But we saw a bit of a form reversal just recently, as Ryan has been preparing for a bout in New Zealand against a super heavyweight who'd be 50 or 60 kilos heavier than him, just a beast of a man. And Ryan has been in preparation for that, and in training with Lachlan seemed to have it on Lachlan, which surprised a lot of people.
Yeah.
In the world of YouTube. And so we're going to find out once and for all who's the number one in the country. Any predictions around that?
I'm picking Ryan.
You're picking Ryan? You're going to go Ryan?
And my reasoning, I think...
Does he still sponsor your YouTube channel?
I'm picking Ryan. He's sponsoring my YouTube channel.
Don't forget to go to Pound for Pound.
Yeah, for pound, for all your arm wrestling needs. So Lachlan is a very strong guy. And he has, if you ever watch his videos, he's deadlifting 300 plus kilos. He's super strong. Bench pressing, your traditional powerlifting. He's a strong guy. On the arm wrestling table, he uses that strength, and his technique is not at the same level, I would say, fairly, as what Ryan's is. But his strength allows him to win the majority of his matches based off of that. But he's in the last year, especially, I see his technique has improved significantly, and that's probably through all the table time he has had with Ryan.
With Ryan, yeah.
But it might be to his detriment in this match because
Ryan knows his ins and outs.
The person who taught you how to do everything is the one you're going against.
Wonder what he didn't tell him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in arm wrestling, there is so much based around that setup of where your hands are, your wrist positioning, and your knowledge of your opponent and what their strengths are, where to avoid allowing them to go, where you can feel it when your hands are being put together before the referee says go. You get a lot of information as to what they're trying to do, and it's like, if you know this person's game inside out, it's like, oh, he's trying to do this move, well, I need to do this to avoid that, so I think that...
So how much heavier does Lachlan have to be to beat Ryan? Because I think there's about 10 kilos or so difference between them at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if weight is the factor. I don't think it is. I think he could be 40 kilos heavier, and it wouldn't change anything.
Okay.
I think it's...
Because it seemed on the table previously when there was a gap of about 15 or so kilos, Lachlan seemed to be able to dominate him physically. It didn't matter the technique so much. There was enough there that Lachlan was able to power through.
Yeah. Well, I think in recent training videos, Ryan has closed that gap. And, you're seeing a lot of back and forth where it was previous to that, maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, when Ryan was down here for the Apex Festival. He said, there's nothing I can do against Lachlan. I can't move him here. I can't move him there. But he's obviously upped his game as well in terms of the strength side. So it's interesting, technique versus strength, and when somebody does have enough strength to keep that technique from being the factor, then they can win. You can blow through somebody's superior technique. But if you have a strength level that allows you to get the technique that you need, then that's where you'll get through. But I do think it will be close. I'm not sure how many rounds they're doing, but let's say there's 6 rounds, they'll probably pull 6 rounds regardless. I think Ryan will probably win 5. So I think that Lachlan's strength might get him through either right at the start or maybe in the first or the second round. But I think the technique that Ryan Bowen and the setup knowledge that he has will probably get him the victory.
It's going to be a big one. Lots to look forward to. You're betting on that one? Because that one's on Stake Kings?
Stake Kings.
Stake Kings.
Right.
Do you understand much about that? Do you know how that works?
Yeah, it's
okay.
strange.
Maybe you can explain that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a betting website, and you've got your 2 opponents. Then you can put a bet on one or the other. But the way that they've set it up is, I think they've done this. It's like with a traditional betting website, anybody can jump on and make a bet. With this one, they have like a set amount of money that can be put on somebody, and they call it like a block or something. And it's like, this block is open, and you can bet while it's open. Once it hits a certain money point, and it's probably because the owners of Stake King don't want to be in a position where they lose a lot of money. So let's say it's $1,000 that could be bet on as a maximum block, and it's like, okay, if you want to get in on the action and you want to bet $50, then you're able to do that in that block window. Once the amount of money has been reached, $1,000, people have put $1,000, that block is ended. So whether or not they decide, okay, well, we can put another block out, and will set a different rate.
Yeah.
That's what they'll do. So, so you might jump on there and find that the block is open and you can put your bet on.
Yeah.
But you might not be able to bet the amount you want. But it might be closed on one opponent and open on the other. But, I think it's an interesting way to do it. But I would say that's the reason they've set it up that way. So they're reducing their risk as somebody put $10 million on this. We don't have that much. So reducing their exposure.
Yeah. Well, it's sensible and bringing money into the sport as well. And just another element to it that's just adds to the fun factor somewhat too.
Yeah, it's good. You put $20 on something, and you're so much more invested in it.
Yeah, that's right.
It's weird, even if it's $5-10. You're like, sometimes there'll be a UFC fight on, and I've never seen either of the guys before, and I'm like, $5 on it, and then you're like going for that.
Yeah, you got
like, come on,
you're my guy.
Yeah, come on, got the money going. I'm gonna win $2.60 if you win.
Well, there's so we've got two big promotions going on, and I know how hard it is for local promotions to get any event up and running right now. It's so difficult in this COVID era of restrictions and lockdowns, and not just hard to put on an event and get people into a room, but hard for the fighters to prepare. And for those fighters that have been in lockdown in New South Wales and Victoria, they'd know exactly what I'm talking about. And and our thoughts are definitely with you. These are very, very difficult times, especially for those athletes that feel they might be peaking or working towards the peak of their career, to have, in some cases, a year or two basically taken away from them. It's really tough. So, but two local fight promotions are wading through the COVID mire right now, and DFC's Diamondback Fighting Championships event, we were talking about that when we were last on air, and it's been postponed on several occasions now, but end of October looks like a thing, so fingers and toes crossed for that. And we've got Pride Fight Championship, Fight Series, taking place October long weekend here in Adelaide as well. A huge card, a lot of local talent.
I keep saying, because one of Connelly Angel is running the event, putting it together. One of her trainers comes through, trains at my gym, and every time she comes in the morning, I'm like, you got 19 fights happening on that card?
19 fights.
19. I'm like, what time is it starting? She's like, 5 o'clock. I'm like, it's going to end
5
at
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to end at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's like telethon, but with kicks and punches.
That's right. Exactly. It's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. Less fat cat. Yeah. It's so huge event. And just congratulations to Carly in particular for being so persistent. There's not a lot of money involved in running these types of promotions, and to keep going against the inertia of restrictions and SA health mandates and supporting the athletes as well. My hat's off to you, Carly. Well done. And we're really looking forward to it. So we'll be down there on the October long weekend supporting the event. So and you should do the same. If you haven't already got your tickets, head over to pridefightseries.com.au and secure your tickets now. There's still a few left, but of course all access is restricted thanks to COVID. So make sure you get a good ticket now.
It's 999 tickets available maximum, and from what the trainer was telling me, that they have all the people who previously bought their tickets for the event that's been postponed. No one's returned. So
excellent. That's
everyone
a really
wants
supportive
to see
community.
this, and no one's like, okay, we'll give my ticket back. So there might be limited supply. So if you're interested, it's Muay Thai. So 19 fights, a lot of local fighters, but there is a significant amount of interstate fighters coming along. Titles fights on the line, a lot of girls fighting as well. I think there's 4 girls fights on there.
Awesome.
So it should be a big event. 19, if you're interested in Muay Thai.
If you've been missing out and you need your fill of live fight action, then this is a must-see event.
Yeah, they probably should run like 3 fights at the same time in the same ring. Just to get through.
Is that the team MMA? I think that's a Russian concept, that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always Russian. It's the slap fighting thing.
So if you haven't already got your tickets, make your way straight over to the website now, pridefightseries.com.au. Get your tickets now, support local combat sports. And for now, I think that's it from us. So thank you so much for joining us again. Thanks for waiting as we got this beautiful studio all built out. Thanks to Roman for his persistence on the technology side of things over the last few days. But he's been here since 9:30 this morning getting this all set up so that we look as good as what we do. So if we don't look that good, it's Roman's fault. And Matt, a pleasure to have you back, mate. Thank you very much. You got both of them out there. There we go. That's what they all came to see.
That's right.
Izzy's on a secret mission right now that we can't really talk much about. So we're going to leave it there before we do say too much about something we don't know about.
She's gone dark.
She's gone dark.
Rogue.
That's all you need to know for now. But she will be back, and looking forward to having Izzy back here in the studio sometime soon. So, and to everybody who's been tuning in, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to bringing you a whole lot more Daily Combat Sport podcast very, very soon. Thanks, guys.